Okay, this is Chapter 5, Part 2. And Chapter 5, Part 2 is on operant conditioning. And and when you talk about operant conditioning, talk about B.F. Skinner, because he's the father of operant conditioning. And he believes behavior is controlled by the environment. So therefore, if you control the environment, you control behavior. And the way he did that with animals, his rats, and with his pigeons, would develop a Skinner box, what used to be the puzzle box, but it's where he could control the environment of the animals. Um, Operant conditioning believes that learning takes place between the response and reinforcement, whereas classical says learning takes place between the stimulus and response. So you have an operant, you have S-R-R, and that's a learning between the R and the R. Classical is elicited, always elicited. It's sometimes called type S or respondent, and you react to the environment. The environment is forcing you to do a certain behavior. The behavior is brought out by the experimenter. In operant, you act on the environment, hence the term operant, operator. You operate it on the environment. And the experimenter waits for the organism to respond, then he reinforces it. And Skinner says that the key to behavior is behavior modification. All teachers should modify behavior. And there's a lot of ways to modify behavior, but his favorite is shaping. And shaping is reinforcing a series of responses, each of which is somewhat closer to the final terminal behavior. The book calls it differential reinforcement of successive approximations. That sounds really impressive, but it is basically you reinforce each step, and each step has to be closer to the final behavior. So if you've got a new puppy and you want him to come to you, and you say come, if he doesn't move, you don't do anything. And every time he comes a little bit closer, you reinforce him. And if he goes back or doesn't do anything, you don't say anything, you don't do anything. And every time he comes closer, you reinforce him until he comes up to you, and then you reinforce him a lot. So you shaped his behavior to come when you say come. So you reinforce each small step. Each small step's got to be close to the final behavior, and you only use reinforcement. You don't say no, or you don't punish. You only reinforce it, and it got to be very small steps, and each step has to be towards the goal. Reinforcement is a thing. Reinforcement is an effect, and we have a positive reinforcer and we have a negative reinforcer. And the only difference, this confuses students because the word negative, but both of them increase behavior. Both positive and negative increase behavior. Where positive, you have to add something good. In negative reinforcement, you take something away bad. It's just like the best example probably is the seat belt. You know, you had that ding, 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 noise, and then you plug in the seat belt and the noise stops. So you take away that annoying sound to increase behavior, which is using your seat belt. So that's negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement increases behavior. And there are three types of, you can have three types of positive reinforcers, three types of negative reinforcers. The positive reinforcer, we have a primary, and primary is only 6 things: food, thirst, sex, warmth, dreams, and sleep. That's it. So if you give somebody a cookie, you're using a primary reinforcer. So you can have a positive primary reinforcer, you can have a negative primary reinforcer. Then we have a secondary reinforcer, and that's anything that gets you a primary. So a coupon for a pizza at Pizza Hut is a secondary because it gets you food. Or if you trade a pencil for a drink of water, the pencil's secondary because it got you water of thirst. So secondary gets you a primary. So you can have a positive, a secondary reinforcer or a negative secondary reinforcer. And the third is generalized, which is everything else. The only confusing thing is the most common generalized reinforcer. The most common generalized reinforcer is money, and the most common secondary reinforcer is money. So it depends on what you buy. If you buy an outfit because it will keep you warm, then that's secondary. If you buy an outfit because you think you look hot in it or good in it, then that's generalized. If I give you a donut, that's primary. If I give you a boat, that's generalized. So reinforcement is either positive or negative. Then we have punishment. Punishment always decreases behavior. Behavior goes down as punishment. Even if I say to you, I notice you only smile 5 times in class, and I want to increase the smile, so I said, every time you smile, I give you $1,000, and you only smiled 3 times. The money was punishment because behavior went down. Don't get hung up on what it is. Get hung up on what it does. And so punishment is removing something good or adding something bad. So we have punishment 1 and punishment 2. But I'm not going to worry about that because that really gets confusing. So people get confused between negative reinforcement and punishment anyway. So we're just going to have punishment. We're not going to have punishment 1 or punishment 2 or positive punishment or negative punishment. We're just going to have punishment. Skinner believes that punishment is not a good idea because of 3 side effects of punishment. It draws attention to the undesirable behavior. And if you're going to be a teacher and you punish your students, that tells them you don't like that. And they kind of save that. And when they want to get even, they do that. Little kids scream because they know it bugs their parents. Even though they get punished for doing it, that tells them, they don't like it, so I'm going to use it. 2, there's emotional side effects. People remember the punishment and not why they got punished. This is why it's very important. We'll learn in the next chapter to make sure the child knows why they're getting punished. And 3, punishment doesn't work. It stops it for the short term, but not the long term. You probably never got a speeding ticket, but if you did, you're not going to drive slower anymore. I mean, you're still going to try to push the envelope. And so then we'll stop here, and then we'll pick up Psych 2 in a minute. Okay?